Hello, I'm Clint Walker, and this is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. And today we're going to talk about why your CMA and the appraisal that you just got back from the lender don't match. Which I guess implies that the appraisal is low. Maybe you got lucky and it's much higher than you expected. Oh boy, CMAs. CMAs are tough. Because they are the go-to tool for agents, but they are not really able to be specific enough to address a property with any complexity. And what's more, I think most often when I receive them, they're focused on the median prices, median price per square foot, median sizes, and your appraiser does care about median values. We use medians, analysis of median prices in some of our market conditions research to see if prices are going up or coming down or staying stable, what inventory levels look like, that sort of thing, to measure trends. But in trying to determine the price of a specific property, the median price is not useful unless your house is the median size. So if these two things happen to line up, then they could be useful. But so more often than not, they just don't. And because houses, they vary so widely and get in their sizes. So the other thing is, the other problem with just grabbing some median numbers and applying them to what you're trying to list is things like your property, your listing having an extra large yard or an extra small yard or an in-ground pool or lots of other different things that might affect the value need to be considered but aren't considered when you're just using a CMA tool to get this generic data. So I want you to be careful in relying on any of those that aren't adjusted or narrowed down very precisely to be like your listing. And I think some of them do have this capability, but many of them don't have the capability. And don't be offended by this, but agents, and I would be including myself as an agent before I became an appraiser, agents aren't qualified to make adjustments to properties to narrow them down, to narrow the range of differences down. That's literally what an appraiser spends years learning how to do. And I think that I remember from my NAR Code of Ethics class, agents have to be careful in overstepping in that regard. So if the property gets any sort of complexity to it, it's really going to undermine the value of what your CMA can do. And that's going to be any sort of complexity is going to be a red flag that you might want to consider getting a pre-listing appraisal. So I guess that begs the question, what constitutes complexity? Now, I did a video a couple weeks ago on complex properties, but when it comes to complexity, especially in the scope of what we as agents are qualified to do, I'm not trying to speak for every agent here, but many, many agents, okay? In the scope of what we're qualified to do, most agents like to price properties on a price per square foot basis. And that's all well and good as long as the square footage of the house is the most important factor or one of the most important factors, okay? Because when you price something on a price per square foot basis, that is, you are necessarily saying that the square footage of the house is the most important thing. So if you've got a house on acreage, you would have another factor in pricing that is very important. If you've got luxury side improvements like in-ground pools, barns, shops, lots of other things, those would necessarily be other valuable factors that need to be considered. If you've got a house that's got a basement, then you've got another very important factor that needs to be considered. If you've got external side influences like proximity to an airport or a landfill or an interstate, that's another value component that has to be considered. So in situations where you start adding those other factors like that, price per square foot really becomes less relevant, and you really need somebody to be able to isolate those value components and speak to whether they do or don't have an impact, which goes back to the CMA, and in those situations that would also undermine the value of a CMA, which is primarily just pulling in prices, generic prices and generic prices per square foot, and giving you the median, or trying to convey to you some trend to use. Okay, so again, non-complex properties would be things like townhomes, except where they sometimes have basements or sometimes have weird stuff going on with them. Townhomes are very often not complex, and a price per square foot methodology is really can be very solid. But when you get into site-built houses and people owning their land and being able to really get creative with what they do to it, they get complex fast. So that would sort of be why the CMA may lead you astray. I'll tell you on the appraisal side too. I've complained before, and if you've been to one of my classes, you've heard me complain that only about 5% of agents bother to interact with me before I turn my report in, which would be trying to give me comps or upgrades or anything else that I suggest you do on every single deal. But the good ones who do, they'll often hand me a CMA, which lists their comps, but it really is just trying to give convey a trend in that median price or median price per square foot. And I find that even when they give me that, I find it much less useful. Like, less useful to the point that I would prefer for you to just save the piece of paper and hand me the listings, the actual listings that you use to create the CMA. I would much rather just have those. Save the little CMA printout for another situation. I doubt that I'm alone in the appraiser community in just having a preference of getting your comps. But my suggestion is, get the CMA and giving it to your appraiser. Print out the actual comps that you used to, or that you would use to create the CMA. Go through each one, and at the top of the comp, just write a quick one-liner about why that comp, why you like that comp, why you don't like that comp. Maybe it's got something that is inferior to your listing, or something that's superior to your listing, and explains why it's more expensive. Maybe you know something about the circumstances of the sale, like maybe it was a contentious divorce and they had to dump that property, or maybe somebody lost their job and they had to dump that property. These things, the listing agent's probably not advertising these on the listing, but you, as the boots on the ground in that area, might have heard that from them. So if you've got some extra insight into the terms of that sale that might have affected what happened with it, that would be a great thing to write a little note on that listing about, listening to your appraiser, letting them know that, because if that sale comes out really low when they're looking at their sales array, that explanation could allow them to eliminate it, right? Like, it's an arm's length sale, they're entitled to use it, but if it's not lining up with the other ones, they need some explanation to tell the lender and the underwriter why they're going to throw it out. Okay. So skipping the CMA, providing just the comparable sales, much better for us. But anyway, I hope that helps. I know as agents, we sort of get the short end of the stick, especially compared to what appraisers get in terms of selecting comparable sales and knowing what all is possible and what we shouldn't do, and even, the priorities. So if we can ever help you with a sort of a complex property, and and narrowing that down, or doing a consultation and digging in, even if it's just some guidance. I have agents call me for consultations where they've already got their sales picked out, and they just want some guidance to see if they're going the right direction, if there's anything else I need to consider and what they're looking at there. I love that. I love doing that sort of teaching and just collaboration on that sort of thing. If we can ever help you with something like that, we would love for you to reach out. You can find me at truepointappraisals.com. We've just recently switched over to that from appraiserpool.com. If you go to appraiserpool.com, it'll send you to True Point Appraisals. That's still me. But we are working on appraiserpool.com 2.0 right now, so it's sort of on the back burner for a minute. But anyway, I hope all that was helpful. I really appreciate you watching as always, and we will catch you next week.